A couple of the other things that it talks about are in relationship to judging people's culture. We have a tendency to judge others based on visual appearance, also based on interactions, and just knowledge and experiences that we develop over time make us judgmental about certain people and certain groups. We're taught some of these things even from our agents of socialization. And so part of the module discusses that about being ethnocentric, that a lot of times we have a very biased perspective, and we kind of covered this when we talked about the sociological imagination and history and biography in previous module, about how your history, the time you live, and your personal experience, your biography, make you a biased person. It's just what you've been around and exposed to. You tend to favor those things and favor that viewpoint, even if that viewpoint is narrow-minded. And so ethnocentrism really talks about that and focuses on how we judge others based on our cultural center, where we came from. We tend to be very centric because that's what we know. So we judge others based on from what we know. And then the other term, which is opposing to that, is cultural relativism, which is about really developing, using your social imagination and trying to understand others based on what their history and biography is, where they came from. The difficulty is always knowing when to be judgmental, because there are certain cultural practices like pedophilia, any special like human rights violations related to abuse, sexual violence. Everybody kind of understands, we have consciousness and we know those things are wrong, ethically wrong. So in circumstances or places where those kinds of behaviors are considered normal and acceptable, it is appropriate to make judgment when it's violating someone's human rights. And there's some activities that in ethical reasoning in Module 1 that also cover that. So if you want to go back and reflect on those, I advise you to do so. It helps you understand ethnocentrism and cultural relativism. And also ideas of imperialism, where one group tries to conquer another group. And they do that in a variety of ways. Sometimes it's genocide. Other times it's moving a population transfer, kicking them out of certain areas. So that's a good section. Those are on page 36, 37. And then the rest of the module is set up in the issues based on the social categories. So you'll have issues related to race and ethnicity, issues around gender, sexuality, and then issues on social class. This is very common the way the rest of the book is set up. Modules 4, 5, and 6 are set up the same way. There's introductory material at the beginning, and then it focuses on certain areas or topics for the rest of the module. So on the social issues section under racial relations, there'll be an introduction, and then it picks certain issues to discuss, and we've included the most current issues that have been going on in society that have caused a lot of debate, just to make people think about it, pros and cons, look at some of the data. So you'll see information in here about racial profiling, including colorblind racism, where some people believe race doesn't exist. Everyone has an equal opportunity, but they don't realize that not everybody starts out at the same place and has the same access to the same resources. So you think about technology. There are certain racial and socioeconomic groups who, yes, they have an opportunity to develop technological knowledge, but if they not even have access to technology, they live in rural communities that are remote, they don't have the infrastructure, and it's expensive to get it, then they're already behind. It takes them longer to develop, to be successful, to achieve that knowledge, to get that job in technology. So that's what colorblind racism, it really is trying to ignore the fact that there is racism, trying to eliminate blame on the racial group I belong to, saying, hey, no, it's fair for everybody. But it's really is a myth. It's almost like the idea of racism itself is a myth, because race is socially constructed. We have information and data from all the studies in anthropology showing that there is one race, and it's the human race. Our differences in skin color, body shape, eye color, hair color, all those kinds of things, the physical characteristics are all environmental, historically environmental, based on how groups migrated and moved. So colorblind racism kind of falls into that same category, trying to dismiss or acknowledge the factual information and data out there that there are differences on how people are treated based on physical appearance. The chapter also covers immigration, which is a hot topic right now, and then moves into gender and sexuality, talking about the gender binary, how we always try to make people fit into, if you're born with male or female bodies, then gender, the roles that we teach you, the norms we teach you, have to fall within that. So if you're born a boy, then we expect you to learn all the male characteristics, and we socialize you that way. And even if it doesn't feel comfortable or normal for you, how we try to make you fit into these frameworks, when really the qualities of being male and female can complement each other if boys and girls have both characteristics. So for example, if we just focus on teaching boy-male characteristics, how to be independent, aggressive, leaders, those are great qualities, but those are also qualities that you would want in a little girl, right? There are times that a little girl has to be aggressive and know how to protect herself, fight back. There are times that girls need to learn how to be independent and survive on their own, economically, educationally, right? Things like that. And then it's also boys, right? Some of the characteristics we teach girls are nurturing, caregiving. Well, we want boys to be nurturers and caregivers, not just for their families, but for society as well. So the binary part goes into that. There's also things about pornography, now that pornography is so accessible on computers and through the internet, and the impact that it has on young kids who view this pornography. So I recommend reading that chapter. It's really good. And then also the section on rape in the military, quite sensitive, but understanding that this is a major issue within the military. And there's like this wall of silence that's been hiding these issues. And it's both men and women that are being raped during their service. And then the last section looks at social class issues related to poverty and food insecurity. A lot of times, you know, we understand that there are the homeless and people in extreme poverty, but we don't realize that a lot of the population is marginally living in poverty, and they don't have access to food and resources that keep them healthy and productive. And so there's some sections on that. And then the very last part of the module looks at your critical thinking, evaluating what you learned through the module, maybe your inductive, deductive reasoning, as well as some fallacies that you may have had. There's a section asking you to think about that and understand the deficiencies you may have had in your thoughts about these different areas. And there's a theoretical analysis part that kind of reviews how you would apply to the theories to these issues of culture. And then a social policy, which is about the laws related to the power of culture, and then social movements that are currently occurring in some of these issues regarding race, gender, sexuality, and social class. So that concludes this section on Module 3. Ta-ta for now.